All right, guys, yesterday I talked about my top potential Cinderella type teams, lower seeds that I think possibly could go far. Now I'm going to be talking about higher seeds, mainly teams that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 seeds that I think will lose early and not make the Sweet 16. So we're going to go through this. I'll go through my opinion. We'll take a look at some of the analytics, and there are a few of these teams that certainly I will be staying away from. You're going to want a few bigger upsets in your bracket, but the first thing to talk about is the 1 seeds. Unless you're trolling, you're really not going to want to have a 1 seed losing in round 1. It's only happened one time in history. You take a look, Alabama, Kansas, Houston, whether it's Purdue or UCLA, there's kind of a cat fight right now for that final number 1 seed. The thing with Alabama, it really just comes down to if you believe in karma or not. Alabama, the whole Brandon Miller situation, I'm not going to get into it, but it is a very iffy situation. So, certainly Alabama, minimum will be round of 32, but we're all going to have to kind of judge it for ourselves. And, Alabama, you look at their analytics, their metrics, they are like a free top 16, Sweet 16 team to pick. But you look at like the way they've been playing recently, things like that, there's a lot that goes into Alabama. Kansas, they've just played such a hard schedule. A lot of people are thinking they should be the number 1 overall seed. Houston, just probably the most complete team analytically. The knock on them is their schedule. Purdue, the Big Ten's a little bit down this year. If Zach Edey gets in foul trouble, they could be in trouble. But those are kind of just the 1 seeds. In terms of any of those teams losing early, like before the Sweet 16, is there a 1 seed that could potentially lose in the round of 32? Houston, I think, is guaranteed to the Sweet 16. Kansas, I think, is probably guaranteed to the Sweet 16. Purdue, in a round of 32 game, if you get a zesty 8-9 team, maybe. I would say I think Bama is guaranteed to the Sweet 16 as well, but there's a little bit of an extenuating circumstance surrounding that team. So we will just have to see what 8-9 matchup they get. Looking at the 2 seeds, UCLA, the big injury to Jalen Clark, that's going to be very hard to judge that team. Texas is a team I'm a little bit concerned about. Baylor, I think, is a solid Sweet 16 team at minimum. Arizona, I'm a little concerned about them stockpiling wins in the Pac-12 and running up their analytics in a bad conference, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Marquette, I really like Marquette as a 3 seed to go to the Sweet 16. Gonzaga is hot as anyone. There are a lot of analytical models right now that think Gonzaga should be a 2 seed. They've got the best offense in college basketball. I think if you're talking about the goal is always to get as many Sweet 16 teams as possible, as long as Gonzaga doesn't have like a crazy matchup, like a really good 6 seed. Like if I'm Gonzaga, I want to avoid Kentucky when I'm looking at those 6 seeds. TC, if Gonzaga's 6 seed is TCU, they're an auto lock to the Sweet 16, an auto lock. Kansas State, that's probably the first team I look at, and I seriously consider a 14 over a 3 upset with Kansas State. I do not like Kansas State at all. We will get into the analytics. This is absolutely super in-depth. This is a bombshell. Stay away from Kansas State, whatever you do. Tennessee, very polarizing. Tennessee is a top 5 team analytically, but they keep losing. We'll see how they do in the SEC tournament. I'm concerned about Tennessee, though. UConn, they're a lock for the Sweet 16. They're a lock. Xavier, I have concerns about. I think Indiana, as long as they right the ship, you've got the elite guard play, you've got the true freshman superstar scorer, you've got the superstar senior center. They should be all right as long because they've been struggling recently, but I still do like Indiana to the Sweet 16. Virginia, total fraud. They're going to lose in round 1. They might be a 5 seed. We'll see. If they're a 4 seed, I'll pick the 13 over them unless they get a really lucky draw with a 13 seed. Miami's going to lose as well. They will lose as a 5 seed. San Diego State, I have concerns about. St. Mary's, I think, is a complete team, but it's that 12-5 matchup. Who do they get? Charleston, Drake, Oral Roberts. That's a tough matchup. Iowa State I have concerns about as well, but I want to see how they play. And then the 6 seeds, that's really not much of an upset. Is there a 6 seed that I think could go to like the Elite 8 or Final 4? TCU, no way. Creighton, I think, is too inconsistent. A&M, I have to see more from. Kentucky's interesting to me. Yeah, we'll have to see. Maybe Kentucky is a team in terms of the Elite 8. But just looking at this and looking at Final 4 potential teams, when you look at this analytically, in terms of teams that make the Final 4, it's teams that have analytics like Alabama, Houston, UConn, and, those are kind of the teams just trying to look through this. Purdue, the defense is shaky. Kansas could certainly make the Final 4, but guys, I'm going to give you a bombshell major intel right now. It's not happening. Kansas won the national title last year. Repeats are not going to happen. So there's 0 point in picking Kansas, in my opinion, to even make the Final 4 analytically. But certainly you're not going to want to have Kansas in the national championship and winning the national championship. That is not going to happen historically. I would say go with one seed to make the Final 4. That's what I would say. Maybe 2 at the most. At the absolute most, 2 1 seeds. But traditionally, you're going to want 1 seed and then a combination of 2, 3, and 4 seeds mainly, unless you get an inkling about a team that's lower and you say, I just love this team so much, I think they're going. But that's normally how it looks there. Taking a look at this overall analytical percent chance graph, you can see round of 32% chance. Really, all of those top 1 seeds should be a 99.9% chance for the round of 32. But just looking at that, you've got a team like Kansas State, only a 42% chance to make the Sweet 16. Marquette, they've got at 45. UConn, they've got at 60. Xavier, they've got under 50. Indiana, they've got all the way down at 28. I disagree with that, but I agree Virginia at 27. Kentucky at 31. Creighton up to 40. San Diego State at 47% chance, so like a 50-50. And looking at some of the better teams, you've got like Baylor, 53% chance. Kansas at a 56% chance. I'm really not fully sold in on Texas. I'm not sold in yet on Texas. I have to see the draw that they get. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to make Texas go to the Sweet 16. Because to me, they're just lacking something with that team. I know they got the interim head coach. They're doing that whole thing. We will see what happens there, but just teams that I would advise people to stay away from right now. Virginia. So Virginia, they're going to be a 4 or a 5 seed. They're ranked 34th in terms of T rank. This team does not have a good offense. You look at their overall game scores, they're running up good game scores in a horrible conference, and they've had some really bad games recently. They lost by 15 to Boston College. They lost to North Carolina. They barely beat Clemson. They beat Louisville, but Louisville is terrible. It's very easy to run up a good game score against a team like Louisville. Of course, we'll see how they do in the ACC tournament. Maybe that'll impact my thinking, but Virginia is a team I'm highly considering having lose in the first round. Certainly not looking like they're going to make the Sweet 16. The next team, it's going to be Kansas State. So Kansas State sitting at 21 overall. In terms of their T rank, very solid. They're probably going to be, you're looking at possibly a 3 seed, so a 3v14, and then they'll possibly face a 6 seed in the second round. They've run up good game scores. They've had a hard conference for sure, but this is a team I just simply haven't bought all year. I think a lot of these Big 12 teams are going to lose early. That's not to say the conference is bad. I think the conference is very good, but overall, Kansas State is a team I am personally out on. Taking a look, they're really top-heavy on 2 players playing over 80% of the minutes and really being the only scorers on that team. So that is a concern for Kansas State. Next, you're looking at your typical 5 seed to lose, Miami. They're ranked 37th in the ACC. They're 24-6. If the ACC was at its normal level, this is a Miami team that probably has 13 or 14 losses. Taking a look at their overall T rank, it's not terrible. I mean, their game scores recently have been good enough. If you take a look at the far right and you see all the green, they really haven't had a horrible game this year, I guess. But yeah, Miami is a team you're going to want to avoid, especially in a 12v5 matchup. I don't see them making the Sweet 16. And then San Diego State, this is a team that's ranked 9th overall. I have major concerns about their offense. They're probably going to be a 5 seed, I would say, but they just have a massive hole on offense, and it really comes down to who is their elite offensive player in terms of the overall ranking. And then you just look at this team in terms of the PRPG on the left right next to the minutes. There's just nothing elite about it. Their overall score, there's just not one elite offensive player. And that becomes a real issue when you're facing a feisty 12 seed that hasn't lost in 3 months. It becomes a real problem. Finding offense, finding ways to score. San Diego State, if you are San Diego State, you're hoping and praying you're facing VCU in a 5v12 matchup. If VCU, or whoever that team that is, whether it's VCU, Dayton, or St. Louis, whoever it is, you don't want to face Oral Roberts. You don't want to face Drake. You don't want to face Charleston. If you are a 5 seed, you want to face, a VCU type team. And then just taking a look at Arizona. So Arizona is another team from the Pac-12. Whether they're a 2 or a 3 seed, I could see them getting knocked out before the Sweet 16. And it's mainly due to a bad conference. I'm not convinced on Arizona at all, personally. Now, Arizona is a team that does have good analytical rankings, and it becomes a battle, between the analytics and the actual real life thought process of how I'm thinking about this, because the analytics will tell you that some of these teams are really good when they've really just run up numbers against bad teams. But guys, when it comes to the Sweet 16, analytically, I would say, I'll just count it right now: Alabama, Kansas, Houston, UConn. Those 4 teams should probably all be in the Sweet 16 guaranteed, analytically. Just thinking about it right now. When it comes to potential upset, a 2v15 upset, the only thing I can see is maybe Arizona loses. Maybe. But right now I would probably go the 1 seeds and the 2 seeds combined to go 8-0 in round 1. I would probably say that right now. I don't really see a 15 seed outside of Colgate that can win. But also, again, I'm the same person that said St. Peter's was the worst 15 seed I've seen in my life, and they made the Sweet 16. So you have to understand that. I like Marquette as a 3 seed. I'm getting a really weird vibe right now with Marquette. I really am. And it's scaring me because I'm really pondering putting Marquette in the Final Four. I'll be honest right now, I am. I'm pondering doing it. It's a weird feel. It's a feel. There's something about Marquette that I feel it. I'm envisioning it. I'm envisioning people talking about Marquette as they're in a Final Four matchup with Houston. There's a vibe about it that you can feel. It's real. It's out there. I know people agree with me. It's been one of the big things. Marquette possibly in the Final Four. I think Gonzaga is probably an Elite 8 team, and then it's because their defense is so bad, but they're a team that I think is very safe in terms of the Sweet 16 due to how good their offense is. Kansas State, stay away from. Tennessee, I would probably stay away from, but I do want to see how they play in the SEC tournament. UConn is a lock to make the Sweet 16, probably an Elite 8 team. Xavier, I would stay away from probably, but it depends on their draw. Indiana, I like the makeup of their roster. Virginia, I'm staying away from. Miami, I'm staying away from. San Diego State, I'm staying away from. St. Mary's is interesting. Iowa State, I'm staying away from. And guys, when I say I'm staying away from, I'm talking about a deep run, to the Elite 8, even the Sweet 16. Some of these teams, they are wobbly, but looking at your bracket, I think the 2 seed that's suspect is Arizona. The 3 seed that's suspect is Kansas State. The 4 seed that's suspect is Virginia. The 5 seed that's suspect is Miami, San Diego State, and Iowa State. That is the official breakdown. That's the full enchilada on some of these fraudulent higher seeds that we have to deal with every year, that they do lose early and they completely nuke our brackets. So guys, that is the full big breakdown on some of the higher seeds that could be on upset alert next week during the first round of the tournament. So guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.